A lot of the fear started before anyone even knew if they were looking at trouble. That was part of the problem. People on a coast or near a river were used to seeing boats. Boats meant fish, traders, local traffic, somebody's relatives, somebody bringing salt or cloth or news. So when sails showed up in the distance, the first few seconds were often wasted on squinting. You can picture it pretty easily. Somebody out near the shore stops what they're doing and shades their eyes. Another person keeps working but glances up. Somebody says it might be merchants. Somebody else says the hulls look wrong. Then one man starts walking fast toward the village, then running, and now people know enough to feel the jump in their stomach, but still not enough to know what they're supposed to do. By then, the boats are already coming in. That's what made it so hard on the ground. It wasn't a siege where word spreads for days and people haul sacks inside walls and count arrows and make a plan. This was more like a normal morning breaking in half. If there was a bell, somebody rang it. If there wasn't, there was just shouting. Boys got sent down one path, then called back and sent down another. Someone ran to get a local leader. Someone else ran to the church. Another person ran home because whatever was happening, they wanted to get to their own people first. And right away you got the first bad split in behavior. Some froze. Some watched too long. Some began doing useful things, but all in different directions. That alone cost time. Then the ships made the whole thing worse because they didn't need much from the shoreline. People like to imagine danger arriving where a proper port is, where everybody expects traffic anyway. But these crews could come in where the water was shallow, where nobody had built much in the way of defense, where the shoreline was just open ground, reeds, mud shingle, a strip of sand, a riverbank, a place where children played or animals were driven down to water. So instead of hearing that attackers had been spotted at a harbor some distance off, villagers could suddenly see armed men stepping straight into the shallows, not far from fields, storehouses, or a track leading inland. That changed the mood fast. A man who had thought there was still time to gather others now saw there wasn't. Women trying to pull children together could hear oars, boots in water, metal knocking, voices carrying over the shore. People out cutting hay or working farther off might not even know yet, so the ones nearest the landing had this ugly moment where they realized help was not organized and might not come before the worst part was over. And the raiders did not have to spread everywhere to make the place feel taken. They only had to move quickly toward the things everyone knew mattered. That was another nasty feature of it. Villagers and raiders were often heading toward the same spots. A church, monastery, storehouse, market shed, pens, a house where tools or silver were kept, a place with cloth, metalwork, weapons, grain, chests, anything compact enough to carry and worth the effort. Raiders looked for concentration. Villagers did too, but for the opposite reason. The local instinct was to save what could still be saved. So instead of a clean stampede inland, you got people doubling back into danger. Someone runs away from the shore, then remembers the church plate or the chest under the bed or the winter stores. Somebody had already untied one cow, and now turns around because there are two more. A monk or priest tries to gather books, vessels, reliquaries, whatever can be lifted in a hurry. A householder starts loading a bundle with clothing, then throws it down to grab tools instead, because tools mean survival later if the place is stripped. Another person goes for seed grain. Another for a hidden purse. Another for the family's better cloak or brooches because those are the easiest things to carry and barter later. Meanwhile, children are standing where they were told 5 breaths ago, then wandering because no one is watching them now. The people who decide to flee immediately are not necessarily in better shape either. Getting away sounds simple until you remember how people actually moved. You have elderly relatives who cannot run. Small children who stop, cry, or have to be carried. Animals that do not go where you want the first time. Carts that take a minute to hitch and then another minute because the wheel catches. Narrow paths where 2 groups jam each other from opposite directions. A bundle that seemed light inside the house becomes heavy after a few hundred steps. Someone refuses to leave without one more thing. Someone else says leave it. They argue in the yard while shouting is getting louder from the shore. That happened a lot in different forms, that half-minute argument over what counts as necessary. Do you take food or silver? Do you take blankets or tools? Do you stop for the family chest? Do you go back for the old woman who said she could walk and now can't keep up? Do you cut loose the animals or keep moving? Do you hide in brush or try for woods farther inland? Do you trust that the men gathering with spears can hold them? Or do you assume nobody is holding anybody and just go? People changed their minds mid-motion. That was common. Someone starts toward the inland path, hears the church bell, and turns back. Another gets halfway to the church, sees smoke or sees armed men already between him and the door, and veers into a lane. Families split because one person is trying to save people. Another is trying to save property. Another is trying to find both. The roads and paths must have looked awful in those moments. Half-loaded carts, dropped sacks, a shoe, a cooking pot somebody thought was worth taking for 10 seconds, a child dragged by the hand, stumbling, a man carrying a chest until he realizes he cannot also manage his daughter, a woman pushing 2 children ahead of her while looking over her shoulder for the third, a frightened animal pulling loose and making everything worse. And if there was any idea of resistance, that had its own problems. The people closest at hand were not always the people best prepared. One man had a spear, another an axe for woodcutting, another nothing but a staff. Another was still trying to get his neighbors together while the first raiders were already moving through the outer edge of the settlement. Men who had been out working farther off might come running in piecemeal and arrive just in time to find the place already in confusion, which is a rotten moment to form up and do anything coordinated. That's why even a small group coming ashore fast could feel much bigger than it was. Not because every attacker was everywhere, but because the village had to react to several urgent things at once and could not do all of them. One cluster was trying to hold a lane. Another was trying to get goods out of a church or storehouse. Another was trying to drive animals away. Another was just trying to get people off the shoreline. So the same handful of attackers could seem to be coming from all sides, because every local eye was fixed on its own immediate problem. Then you add fire, or even the threat of it, and everything speeds up again. Wooden thatch did not give people much room for comfort, and raiders did not need to level an entire settlement to make the loss obvious. A few buildings searched and stripped, a few roofs lit, doors broken, storage opened, pens emptied, and now the whole place feels like it's coming apart. Smoke starts rising while people are still deciding whether to run back for something. Once smoke is in the air, some stop thinking about valuables and start thinking only about who is still inside which building. So you get another scramble. Someone who had been hauling a chest drops it and runs toward a house because they remember a grandparent, a child, someone sick, someone slow. Others shout for water. But carrying water against an armed raid and a spreading fire is not the same thing as dealing with an ordinary accident. Buckets get abandoned halfway. A line never really forms. People are looking at the flames and also at the shore because they can already see goods being dragged back toward the ships. That was the maddening part for survivors. The attackers did not need to stay long enough for any kind of proper fight to settle. They could do visible damage very quickly, grab what mattered most, take captives, push livestock along, and head back while the village was only just starting to collect itself. Imagine the timing from the village side. At first you are trying to identify sails. Then you are trying to decide whether to ring bells. Then you are trying to get family together. Then you are trying to stop people from running in 6 directions. Then somebody says the church is hit. Somebody says the storehouse is hit. Somebody says they're taking animals. Somebody says they've gone to the river path. Somebody says your brother is still down there. And by the time enough defenders gather to feel like maybe now they can do something, the raiders are already hauling away the proof of what they came for. You can see them leaving with it. That matters in a very direct, day-by-day way. It is one thing to hear that a place was raided. It is another to stand there while men drag your goods, your animals, maybe your neighbors, back to boats you can't catch. The speed of it leaves people with all of the unfinished motions still in their bodies. The tied bundle that never got loaded. The door left open. The child found after everyone thought he was missing. The chest hidden too late. The fieldwork still lying where it was dropped that morning. And then the ships go. But the trouble doesn't go with them. After that, ordinary coastal life gets bent out of shape in small ways, firsty. People start looking at the water more than they used to. Not in some dramatic way every minute, just enough to wear on them. If a sail appears, work slows while people watch. If strangers land, no one wants to be the fool who assumes trade too early. At markets, stories travel faster than clear facts. One man says 3 ships. Another heard 10. Someone says a church was burned. Someone else says people were carried off. A traveler mentions raiders on a different stretch of coast, and before long villages that haven't been hit yet are already adjusting their habits. You begin to see the little changes. Valuables get moved or split up. Instead of keeping all the metalwork or silver in one familiar place, people tuck things in smaller hiding spots. A household that used to leave tools in an outer building now drags the better ones inside at night. Religious houses become more anxious about what sits in plain reach. People talk more seriously about watchers, signals, bells, runners. Who is supposed to do what if sails are sighted? The trouble there is that routines sound neat when discussed after the fact and fall apart again when everyone is startled at once. Still, they try. Somebody is told to keep an eye on the coast at certain times. Another settlement arranges a warning system. Goods are stored differently. Exposed places get more attention. People ask whether they should move stock farther inland. Traders with unfamiliar ships get a colder reception. Boats approaching quietly are noticed sooner. A calm day on the water no longer feels entirely calm, because everybody knows how little time there may be between seeing sails and hearing boots in the shallows. That gets into social behavior too. Fear makes people snappish. A man who wants to keep working close to the shore gets called careless. Somebody accused of reacting too slowly last time gets talked over when plans are made. A local leader who told people not to panic may later be blamed for wasting precious moments. A neighbor who saved his own household goods first may be watched differently after that. Another who ran toward the church may be praised by some and called foolish by others. People remember who froze, who shouted, who disappeared, who came back with help, who did not. And all of that sits in the background while life still has to go on. Nets need mending. Fields still need work. Animals still need tending. Boats still have to use the same waters. Trade does not stop being necessary just because strange sails make people uneasy. So there's this constant practical irritation afterward. People have to continue depending on the very coast and rivers that now feel unreliable. That may be one of the hardest parts to live with. The danger is attached to useful places. Landing places, market routes, river mouths, fishing grounds, harbors, paths running down to water. These are exactly the spots people cannot simply abandon without paying for it some other way. So they adapt where they can, but the adaptation never quite settles things. Because then comes the next ugly realization. Even if a village gets better at watching the open coast, even if people start hiding goods faster and warning each other sooner, the threat is not confined to the obvious edge of the sea. Those same ships can use rivers. That unsettles people all over again. A place that felt safer because it sat a bit inland now has to think about bends in the river, mouths of streams, landing places upriver, stretches of water that were mostly just part of travel and trade before. People who had trained themselves to scan the horizon now also have to think about what might be coming from behind that stand of trees along the bank, or around a bend or up a waterway that had seemed like a route into safety rather than a route for attack. Then the daily habits stretch wider. Watching the sea is one thing. Watching every usable water approach is another. You cannot have everybody on alert all the time. People still have to harvest, fish, travel, bargain, pray, sleep. Warnings still depend on somebody noticing in time, deciding correctly in time, and getting others moving in time. That chain is fragile, even when everyone is trying. So the fear does not settle into one clean routine. It keeps slipping. 1 month people are nervous about the coast. Then rumors come of longships farther inland, and now villages along rivers begin having the same awkward conversations coastal places already had. Should goods be moved again? Should boats be kept ready? Who sleeps nearest the bell? Who runs to warn the outlying farms? Do you keep animals closer or farther off? What do you grab first if there are children and elders in the house? Do you trust a strange sail enough to go greet it? Or do you hide first and risk insulting traders? And while people are still arguing over that, somebody will be outside working, glance up at the water, and stop what they're doing because there are sails where there weren't any a moment ago.